Want to call? Well, it's all new now tonight, so
please use
everybody should be able to hear, I would think.
Oh, that's better.
Want to call the meeting of the City Council Finance Committee to order for Monday evening, August the 20th, 2018. It's about 7:02 p.m. Thank you all for coming. Welcome back. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, so it's I guess it's nice to see one another, and everybody looks well, so that's good to know. Councilors, we have a very short agenda before us this evening. Matter of fact, I'm going to already entertain a motion that with item number two is going to be postponed until our finance meeting in September. City Solicitor Attorney Nazarella is still out on vacation and will not be back till next week, and we definitely need him here for that, for this particular item. So if I can have somebody make a motion.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded. We're going to postpone until September finance meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And I will tell you the calendar for September. We may just only have one FinCom, depending upon workload that comes before us after next Monday's council meeting and the council meeting in September. And don't forget, you have a holiday in September as well, and you also have a primary day,
Still
too.
can't hear anything.
Madam Clerk, item number one.
Appropriation of $3,400 from unappropriated estimated receipts for fiscal year 19 of the general fund, $3,400, to Mayor's Historical Commission, $3,400, in order to provide funding for the Historical Society. Invited, Honorable Mayor Bill Carpenter, John A. Condon, Chief Financial Officer.
Mr. Condon?
Mr. Chairman, I
Councilman.
just, point of personal order, can everybody take a little test here? I can't make anything out here. Can we speak right into these microphones, please? I think we need to.
I couldn't understand a word you said, to be truthful with you.
That's what we're saying.
I can't hear anything.
So just talk away from the mic.
How about this? Does this work?
Scream.
Hello?
Mr. Condon?
Okay, councilors, this is an appropriation. When the budget was submitted, the city failed to appropriate money for the Historical Commission, which had just been reconstituted. I think it was Councilor Sullivan who mentioned it. Cuts that were made from the budget was a little amount of money, $3,400. It's the same amount of money as in the mayor's budget for the Women's Commission.
Move to recommend favorably.
On the motion, Mr. President, I think this is Scrivener's error. It shouldn't say Historical Society. That's the nonprofit organization that does wonders in Brockton. It should say Historical Commission.
We'll make sure that's corrected, Councilman.
Thank you.
Wait a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Condon.
Thank you, Mr.
I
Condon.
can't hear a thing.
Other questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to recommend favorably.
Motion's been made and seconded to refer back to the full
thank God.
city council. All in favor? Opposed? Goes back to the full city
Thank
council.
you. Wish they were all so easy.
Item number three, Madam Clerk.
Resolved to invite Police Chief John Crowley and Mayor Bill Carpenter to discuss with the council the policy as to large, loud gatherings at private residences, how it is being enforced, and the scheduling and staffing levels of police personnel to best respond to incidents and calls from the public on summer weekends and holidays, and in particular over June 30th through July 5th. Invited, Honorable Mayor Bill Carpenter, John Crowley, Chief Police.
Good evening, Chief. I know the mayor is, I think, with family members tonight. I know with his father, and I know he's departing also tomorrow. He'll be out of state, so he did indicate that you would be here to answer questions in regards to this particular matter. Thank you for being here. Any presentation, or do you just want to take some questions? And
Just take some questions.
okay, I think this was Councilor Nacastro's
Yes.
resolve. Yes.
Thank you.
Go right
May
ahead.
I? Okay. Thank you for being here this evening, Chief Crowley, and also Captain Picaro. I introduced this resolve in July, right after the holiday week. I've received many calls from constituents about loud parties held outdoors at private residences. The volume of the music disturbs neighbors. In some instances, it makes their houses jump, and it can't be masked by turning their televisions up and cranking up their air conditioning. Much of Ward 4A and 4B are older, long-settled neighborhoods with houses that are built close together and narrow streets. I've received complaints about these parties, as well as there have been a lot of complaints on See-Click Fix on the city's website, and it includes the noise and the streets being blocked, and the driveways being blocked in some instances, and in some cases, music played by disc jockeys, and they go very late. We all have to live together. And so I filed this resolve, and I had some questions that I wanted to ask you this evening. The first one is, share with us the police department's approach to these noise calls.
Well, it all depends on what kind of noise call it is. If it's a party, if it's a loud house party, we have a stacking system, goes by priority of the calls. Goes red, yellow, white. White is the lowest priority. And as the calls progress upward, they get dispatched. Cruisers get dispatched to them. So a loud party isn't, I mean, it's annoying, and it wrecks the quality of life for those people that live near it, but it's not a matter of life and death for other
No.
priority calls.
Of
So,
course, of course.
Cruises are free, we go, but it all depends on how busy we are.
How the evening is going, sure. And most of these parties take place in the late afternoon into the evening, sometimes into the wee hours. I've told my constituents when they call me to call the police. However, that is an issue. As you say, you have to prioritize your calls. Sometimes you don't get there, or sometimes your people don't get there. Sometimes they get there much later than when the call is first put in. What should I counsel constituents?
To be vigilant and keep calling.
Keep calling, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
keep calling us. I mean, it's not that we don't want to be there, we want to be there. But sometimes the call volume is just outrageous, particularly during those dates you wanted us to look up, the 30th
Yes.
through July 4th.
Yes.
It's very demanding, taxing on the men because it's a busy time.
Yes.
The only busier day is probably New Year's Eve, but it's a day that is very busy.
Of course. My constituents have also commented that when they do call, sometimes the people answering the call kind of discourage them. They say things like, you have to get along with your neighbors, or they have the right to have a party, or just turn up your television. Is that what should be happening? Should those comments be being made?
No, comments like that should be made, but they should also make the caller aware that we're very busy and it could be an hour or two before we can get there.
Right. Right.
But for them to evaluate the call, that shouldn't be happening, and if it does, naturally, you could let me know about it. Everything's taped, we can just listen to the tape and, have a conversation with the telephone operator.
Sure. Does the police department enforce the current noise ordinance that we have here in the city of Brockton?
We do our best with the noise. The current ordinance is, it's kind of difficult to understand. We just play it by ear for the party. We'll go. We usually do the 3-strike rule. First time we'll go, hey, you got to please quiet it down. We got to go again. We'll tell them next time we come, the party's going to have to end. And that's been the practice for as long as I've been here, over 30 years.
Okay. Does the police department now have a noise meter?
We do not.
Okay, that would be a great thing
Yes.
to add. Does the police department issue citations for noise violations?
We don't issue citations, but we can charge the homeowner with allowing a disturbance to take place or an unruly household and take out a court complaint. And depending on how the court handles it, they may get a fine, they may not.
Does that happen very often, that they go to court, or they're taken to court?
I would say we probably do it 4 or 5 times a year.
Okay.
That's all.
I didn't know that. Does the police department enforce the state law on disturbing the peace?
Yes,
And you issue citations on that or complaints?
it would be a complaint or an arrest.
Okay. And does the police department enforce the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection's regulations on noise pollution?
We do not.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about fireworks, because of course they're illegal in Massachusetts for private use, but we all know that over the first week in July, they're used by many amateurs. How does the police department handle fireworks calls?
They go, again, a priority. There would be a low-level priority. They would sit, sometimes they would sit for hours till we could get cruisers there. I mean, over July 4th weekend, we had 111 calls for fireworks.
Yeah,
Everyone here probably heard them. And we can't be everywhere.
of course.
We were very busy during that week. We had 2 shootings on 2 different nights. And once we have a dramatic incident like that, virtually every unit is going to be tied up for an hour or 2 until we can get it under control. And naturally, they're clear for priority calls, but they're not going to be out answering non-priority calls till
Right.
that's all set.
Of course. Well, I reviewed, because you provided them to me, the police department's press logs for the week of July 1st to July 7th. And as you say, over that week, there were 114 fireworks disturbances and 82 loud music disturbances. So that's a total of, in these 2 kinds of disturbances, 196 calls. And in that week, most of the loud music calls were, well, on a single night, there were 37 on Saturday, July 7th. And of course, the most fireworks calls were on July 4th, which was 69. I'm not aware of any arrests that week. The call log doesn't disclose any arrests.
Each call was cleared, matter settled when the cruiser arrived.
Okay. To your knowledge, was anyone cited that week for loud music or fireworks?
No, they weren't.
Okay. I noticed for the 69 fireworks calls on July 4th, 17 of them were marked canceled, you know, under the column which talks about the action that was taken by the police. 17 were marked canceled and 13 were marked cleared. Why were they canceled?
If I had to speculate, because I don't know, I would say that they were probably sitting for a few hours, and the dispatcher probably called the complainant up and said, "Are they still going on?" And my guess would be the complainant said, "No, they're not," so they would have just canceled the call rather than send somebody. That happens a lot when calls sit for a while. We'll call the people back to see if they're still having the issue, and if they want us to come. Usually, you know, they're sometimes in bed already.
Okay. On July 28th, the police department dealt with a commercial event on South Layden Street, which is in Ward 4. And there was a real concern about things happening similar to what happened on Myrtle Street last summer, which ended up in a death. By placing patrolmen on the street for a presence, I think you avoided a lot of issues. Did you want to comment on that and how that was all handled?
Well, it was mainly handled because we had prior notice it was going to happen. A lot of these parties, we don't have any prior notice,
Right.
so we can't plan for them. This one was on the internet. It was advertised there was going to be a DJ, security, so we were able to plan for that and take steps so it didn't get out of control.
Yeah, and it was very effective. Was anyone cited or arrested or fined as a result of that event?
No, I'm told between 9 and 9:30, the party was shut down, the homeowners were cooperative, and there was no need for further action.
Okay. Other cities, and you and I have touched on this earlier, other cities address excessive noise in different ways. There were 2 things that I found out recently. In Lawrence, they have 1 cruiser dedicated to noise calls on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays during the summer. And the cruiser is equipped with a noise meter. What are your thoughts?
Anything that can help us. I mean, this is obviously a quality of life issue that's affecting a lot of people in this city, so I would be in favor of that.
Yes, me too, absolutely. In Boston, they have a dedicated monitored phone line. People can call at any time during the night to report a loud party, and they send a cruiser out on it. What's your thought on having a dedicated monitored phone line?
You know, again, I'm in favor of it, but everything is consistent on staffing. It all depends on what we have for people to be able to staff that. line.
Of course, of course. There's a fair number of people here tonight because of this resolve. These noise issues affect all 7 wards and all of our constituents. I'm just the one that brought it to the table this evening. I want to work with you to work on an ordinance. I just found out today that my colleague, Mr. Monahan, to my right here, was also working on a noise ordinance last year.
With Councilor Inieri.
With Councilor Inieri. I'd like to partner with them and work on something for you to get something in front of us as soon as possible, because this is an ongoing quality of life problem. And I thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All set, Counsel?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Counselor, I think Azak, then Cruz, and then Counselor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
As Councilor Nacastro stated, this is a problem that affects all 7 wards, and I've been getting calls since I first got on the city council about this, so I'd like to see it actually be resolved. Instead of just talking about it, I really want to see results. So Councilor Nacastro brought up some good ideas. What we need from you is to actually tell us what can we do on our end to actually move forward. We have a noise ordinance. We also have a nuisance ordinance, yet they have no times and they don't have any fees. They're very vague. So what can we do to help the police department enforce our ordinances? Would it help to have specific times set? Would it help to have fines put on there, like first time, how many times you go out to a home?
I mean, I would suggest, contact either the law department or your council. Look at cities like Newton that have one and it works, and piggyback off what they do. I mean, it's the same problem everywhere.
Okay, so that you think with the more tools we put in the police's hands, the easier it would be to enforce them? I mean,
Absolutely.
right now, they go out and knock on the door and say,
No, it's vague, and, they keep the door shut and don't answer it, we can't go in. So, I mean,
right.
It's not as easy as marching in the house and saying, okay, everybody get out, because you can't.
And that's true, and that's why I think we really have to come up with how we can make them enforceable, make it easier for the police to enforce. I know that there are some state laws that are also, if residents can't block driveways, they can't block streets, which in many cases that's happened in Ward 7 not too long ago. But if, and I know, and I tell my residents, my constituents all the time, just call the police. They keep calling, and they're like, well, we don't want to bother the police. They have enough to do with, on a Saturday, Friday night, they're busy, but you're the only ones that can truly enforce it. So I just tell them, just keep calling. Is there anything they can state when they call? Like if somebody blocks their driveway, blocks their street? A few months back, there was a whole street in Ward 7 that was blocked, and people couldn't access their homes. They couldn't leave. If there was an emergency, emergency vehicles couldn't enter their street. So that brought really a lot of concern. So I don't want to see that happen again, but I want to be able to put in the police department's hands, something that's enforceable, something that we can work with our residents.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing that this is a subject that's very, we've become very passionate about it because we're dealing with it all the time. One resident actually suggested possibly putting together a small pamphlet or a booklet for new residents that move in, and like, this is welcome to the neighborhood. Many residents have no clue what our ordinances are, whether it's taking care of their homes or whether it's noise or whatever it may be. So is that something that you think may help, putting together something, getting the information out to people in our city?
Can't hurt, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Which is true. I know it's frustrating. I just want to see results. I think it seems like we've been talking about this for years, but we really need to figure out how we can work together I think many of these issues can lead up to, as we've seen in the past, fatalities. They can lead into, something, homicides. We don't want to see that happen, but I think, working together, we need to find a solution. So whatever, I'm going to ask you, whatever you think we can do on our end as elected officials, please let us know, whether it's an idea that you've seen in another city or town. I know my colleagues are constantly, we research what works in other places, but if there's something that comes to mind, let us know so we can work together. And I know that I support any ordinance that would make it more enforceable, make it actually enforceable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cruz.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Councilor Castro, for filing this. It is the bane of a ward councilor of these parties, and I understand that they almost by definition have to be low priority. However, they in the quality of life, they need to be a high priority for us. You don't have enough people most nights if something's happening. But in my ward, usually when we've had trouble, it's the same, it's consistent parties. I have a house that every Saturday night, now they've moved evidently, but every Saturday night was having a party. Every Saturday night there were illegal vehicles parked. And in fact, working with some of you people, I think the parties finally stopped when we towed a few cars, and right away they stopped. But I wanted to ask about the party that on South Layton Street that you said you were able to, you saw it online ahead of time, which is great police work, but, so explain to me what you did that.
The mayor's Quality of Life Task Force, they met on Thursday prior. They actually went there and did an inspection of the home. They found the electric box was not up to code. The city went and turned the power off. The homeowner went and bought a generator and had the party anyway.
So I guess my question is, the party was, what, it's like somebody on Facebook said, were they just inviting the general public to come to their party?
It was more like not a party, it was almost someone creating a nightclub out of their home.
Well,
an attempt
okay,
to.
that's where I'm going with this.
It was an attempt to, but it didn't prevail.
And if did they say online, pay $5 to come or pay $10 to
It said
come?
donation. So we had talked with them what a donation is, and, no money was gonna exchange hands. It was a private residence, they had hired security, so it was obvious that it was more than just a
Now, under our
residential house party.
new special events ordinance, they would have had to go and get a license for that.
And I'm not sure whether they did or they didn't do.
They didn't. They did not.
Because these are the ones that I think are our biggest problem.
Good evening, Counselor.
Good evening, Captain. Thank you.
What we did was, and we found out we had received a heads up that they were advertising this party on social media. Wild Water Wars 2018, I think it was called, and it was something about a $25 donation or fee, something of that nature. So when I found out about this, I asked the chief, and he approved the bringing in of extra patrolmen on overtime to be posted on that street for the specific purpose of monitoring that party, because I didn't want another Myrtle Street on our hands.
Well, and I think that's
Yeah.
great proactive police work. Let me ask a question. So these people went forward with their party. Did we charge them for the police officers?
Well, no, to my understanding, we didn't send them.
And by the way, I think it's great what you did, and I think it's important what you did.
Thanks.
Because it did possibly stop, because when there's a difference between somebody's having a party because their son graduated high school, which can get out of hand also.
Right.
But these places that are advertising like that, they're running a business, an unlicensed liquor establishment, which I don't care if they call it donation, and if you need us to put teeth into the ordinance to say that the word donation doesn't carry any water, because if it looks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's a duck. We know that wasn't a donation. A donation goes to a nonprofit. If they're a 501c3,
Yeah.
that's wonderful, and we'll help them. But so the city paid probably $400 or $500 in police overtime, well spent money in this case. But so these people went out and had their party anyways, with people they don't know who was walking in their door if they're advertising on social media, and we could have had another Myrtle Street situation, which is why it's great police work that your people found it and did it. But we have these, I think, on a pretty constant basis in the city, and they're opening basically illegal nightclubs, whatever it might be, and that's where I think we have the biggest problem. Sorry about, excuse me, I just turned. When did you get here? And that's where we need, if you need us to put some teeth in an ordinance, because that's already illegal, to basically run a licensed liquor establishment without a license. And we already have, I think we have the teeth to fight that. And again, think you get a hook down there on the back of a tow truck, start pulling cars out of there, they're gonna be running out of that place in no time and leaving and going home. Now, I know that means we have to have police available, which is why I think the dedicated staff, and it may mean some overtime that we have to put together, but a dedicated car or two on those high-volume nights during the summer, in particular in the fall, would be money well spent by the city in our neighborhoods, because it is a huge problem, that and the fireworks, which I know by the time you get there, it's almost impossible to stop the fireworks, but, you know, it usually stops when some kid ends up losing a thumb, and they think it's funny, but it's the fireworks are one of the biggest problems we have in the city. So if you need us to put that in into some ordinances, because that is, those consistent parties that are they're not really family parties, they are businesses. That's where we're having our biggest problem, and they don't give a rat's patootie. They're the ones who don't. Who else isn't going to answer the door when the police knock on the door? Somebody that knows they're doing something illegal. If they're having a party and it's too loud, and you knock on the door, they're going to open the door and say, "Oh, sorry, we'll keep it down." But these kind of places, am I wrong, or?
No, you're right. But just to let everybody know that the night before, that party was held on a Saturday. The night before, that Friday evening, the homeowner came down to complain about his electricity being shut off. And I got into the whole $25 donation fee aspect of his party, and I explained the illegality of that whole thing to him. And he, at first he said, it's a donation. And I said, well, come on now, you can't do it. So I think he understood when he left the police station that night. And then the next day when I was there, I spoke to security, and they assured me that they had already been told by the homeowner not to take any money. So I was thirdly, the police didn't see any money changing hands. Not that we would probably see it in plain view anyways, but I'm just saying, with those three things in place, we didn't really have much evidence that there was a commercial venture going on right then and there, even though it had been advertised as such.
Right.
And then the other thing was, the night before, myself and a detective tried in vain to search the city ordinances to find the special event permit criteria, and we couldn't. And then I noticed that on the city's ordinance webpage, it says the online ordinances are only current up to October 2016, and that was passed last summer. So without knowing what the special event permit ordinance is, we couldn't enforce it. And then I just didn't know if that was something that the police do enforce, if that was a Board of Health issue.
No, it's
or
a license commission. It's a license commission issue.
Okay, so there was a lot of confusion as to.
Well, that's something we'll make
about
sure
doing
gets fixed.
Yeah.
And because that is a license commission, Captain LaGrace probably could have helped with that, but
Yeah.
we need to get that in your hands so that, because that is exactly what this was put together for. So I'll make sure, I'll talk to the city clerk to make sure that gets updated and in your hands.
But just somebody had asked if there were any arrests made that night, and from my knowledge, we didn't have to make an arrest. There was no violence. We didn't have to ticket or tow any vehicles. Even security told me that last year that there were issues, parking on lawns and fights between neighbors and the drivers, and there was none of that this year. I mean, we didn't have one problem, and that party was shut down by about 9 o'clock.
Well, I'm sure you're proactive.
Yeah, it's almost unheard of to shut down a party like that by 9.
But how often are we able to, how often do we even know ahead of time? That was
Very seldom.
once, and it's great police work, I think, but it's the unusual situation that you were able to, and in fact, in most cases, in my opinion, that person wouldn't have had the party then. They would have waited 2 or 3 weeks and kept it quiet and had it again,
That's the thing. If we didn't have advance notice of that party, and we didn't have the personnel on that street that we did, I don't know what could have happened.
Right, because there's nothing better to ruin a party than having police there, so that's good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Councilor Castro. Council, I just had a question. Council, I just wanted to ask you a question relative to the noise meter. Have you done any cost analysis on what it would cost? It has to be short money. How much it would cost to acquire a few of those for the city of Brockton?
I was just talking to Captain Picaro and Chief Crowley about that before we started the meeting. They're about $100 each, those noise meters.
Yeah, I mean, we did this during the budget with Tim Carpenter, 79 grand for a loader. I think the tourniquet's finally coming to fruition. That's short money. That's like 8 grand. We're just going to do it. we're talking about $400 million budget, let's just buy it. Now, a few years ago, the Ward 3 counselor worked with police. I don't know if you were the chief at that, I don't think you were the chief at the time. And the Board of Health had those meters because there was rock concerts going on up at Campanelli, and there was stuff going on at the fairgrounds, and the Board of Health were the ones that would go up there and do their little, you know, so we need to collectively as a council, vis-a-vis through you, Mr. President, tell the mayor that we respectfully want him to buy 12 of these things, you know, 10 of them, $1,000, whatever it is, because at the end of the day, all the people that are here and all the people that are calling us as councils at large, and more often the ward councilors, they don't want to deal with this, you know? I mean, they're paying taxes and they're just trying to do what they're trying to do. So I want to thank Captain, I want to thank Chief, but I think we collectively have to work together. And as chairman of the ordinance, you know, the 3 strike and you're out rule is fine, I guess, if you're a police officer. I wouldn't give them 3 strikes. I'd go once and I'd say, next time we come back, it's done. But I think from a legislative process and a legal process, let's look at Boston and Quincy and Fall River and New Bedford, and not reinvent the wheel, just bake an agreement into an ordinance that has teeth, that's strong, and then we have to make sure that the city works, you know, with the manpower to make sure that they adhere to it. And if there's fines in there, fine the people. And eventually, just like Mr. Cruz said, when they towed it in Ward 1, when they were towing those cars away, that party stopped. So I think we need to do that. And I don't know where the meters are now. They were with Mr. Tataglia and the Board of Health, but they're only $100. I mean, that's short money. Let's just do it, be done with it. And I want to thank you, Council, for putting this forward. I just had a question, Chief, or maybe Captain. When you do find people that are letting off fireworks, right? My kids think they're great. They hear boom, boom, boom. You know, the older I get, it annoys me, especially, you know, when it's 11, 12, 1 in the morning. But when the police go there, much like underage drinking where you can confiscate the booze, do you confiscate fireworks if you have the ability to do that? And has that happened like this past July 4th? Were fireworks confiscated, or was it by the time the cops got there, they were gone?
I don't think we've confiscated anything this year to my knowledge.
Okay, okay. But at least we can report back to the residents that if they are there, the police are gonna take them, much like the booze they take for underage drinking. So, I mean, it's a slippery slope, and you know, as an elected official for 13 years, yeah, I mean, this is the #1 thing, quality of life. So, thank you, Susan, for what you're doing. And I can ask you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, again, like you've done before with the mayor, you meet every Tuesday, if they can just come up with the money, we'll approve the appropriation and then just get it done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will see what I will see what I can do.
Thank you.
I won't be meeting with him this Tuesday because he's away, so I'm the acting mayor, so let me see what I can do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
How's that sound? I can't do much more either, really. We will take care of it, though, the next time I meet with him. Council Fowle.
Yes, good evening. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, sir.
I'd like to drill down on some specific information, but a couple of preliminary remarks. The fact that the ordinances on the city website are not up to date is irrelevant. We publish every ordinance that's enacted in the newspaper. It's a strict liability statute or ordinance. People are presumed to know these ordinances. Otherwise, you would have to make sure when you went into court that you could prove that someone knowingly read the ordinance book. So I'm not about to buy that. And Attorney Percara, or Captain Percara, you're an attorney. You know that there are strict liability laws and regulations that people simply have to follow.
But like I said, I even Googled the Enterprise article that covered.
Well, every ordinance that we pass is published in the newspaper for everyone to read. The other thing I would say to both of you gentlemen, and I handled many a disturbing the peace call, if you have a breach of the peace, if you have people, and there's a Supreme Judicial Court case on it, if people are complaining about loud parties, a police officer can't be disturbed. Our peace can't be. But if you have people calling Councilor Nicastro, calling the police department and saying, this particular house is disturbing my peace, that's one of the elements of General Laws, Chapter 272, Section 53, is keepers of noisy and disorderly houses. So the tools are there, at least they were there when I was on the street.
Yeah, we've used those in the past.
I can't speak for now. With respect to what went on South Layden Street, all credit goes to Councilor Nicastro for finding that, sending the brochure on to whomever. It said $25, tickets at the door. They had a wet T-shirt contest. They had a porta potty. to pick up on what Councilor Cruz said, if it walks like a duck and it looks like a duck, then it's a $25 duck. And I do sincerely appreciate everything that you did on that evening, but I'm not happy the taxpayers paid for those officers on overtime. In my opinion, we should go back against the homeowner through civil process, and we should send the bill to him, and we should say, you advertised this, you attracted the crowd, you had 3 DJs, you were advertising tickets. We want to be compensated for the police overtime that was expended. And what's curious about this is, in view of what happened in 2017 on Myrtle Street, why wouldn't we send a police officer in undercover the way we do at a liquor store or at a restaurant? I read where we busted some restaurant in the mall for selling to a minor. In view of the fact that we had pre-planning, why wouldn't we send an officer in and find out, do they have to pay $25? Is their liquor being sold or given away? You know, what is going on there? And why wouldn't we do that?
When you send someone in undercover into a liquor store, I mean, he's just posing as a member of the general public. If you're going into someone's home, the homeowner may be aware that he does not recognize this person.
Well, this was in the backyard. I'm not suggesting even going into the home. I'm saying it was advertised as a buy tickets at the door. So we send a police officer in, they pay the $25, and they look around. There's no invasion of privacy and no Fourth Amendment search and seizure issue, and I don't know, I don't understand why we didn't do that. But now let's go back to Myrtle Street and this year. Did the police department, following the issue of the party on Myrtle Street, send any communication to the city solicitor's office saying, look, this is what we ran into on Myrtle Street. Tell us what our boundaries are. Tell us what our procedures or our policies should be to handle these loud parties. Because it would seem to me the city solicitor would be a free resource to take a look at that type of a problem. And I might add, I don't see why DA Cruz wouldn't have an assistant DA get together with the police department and work out, given current case law and given the legislation that's already in place, this is what you guys can do, you men and women can do, this is what you can't do. So I guess my question in a long-winded way is, have we consulted with the city solicitor and or the DA to say, here is an ongoing problem, give us some guidance, if you know?
Not to my knowledge, no.
How many, and this may be a question for the chief, how many people did we have on duty on July 4th from 4 p.m. to midnight?
13.
We had 13 people, and it would be fair to say you were, well, let me strike that. How many were on the street? Because I do know you have people that have to be inside.
This number 13 is all personnel that was assigned to the road, including street supervisors. So
Okay,
13.
so you had 13 on the street, or did you have one in booking and one in the lobby? And
Those aren't counted.
okay, so 13 on the street.
Yes.
Okay. Now, we know July 4th is a very busy day, especially between 4 p.m. and, let's say, 4 a.m. We have an entire year to plan for that. We have prior statistics, historical data as to how busy the police department would be from 4 p.m. until 4 a.m. on July 4th. Why wouldn't we call in more people?
Because we didn't have them. We have the fair in town. We have private details that need to be filled. We have people that take vacation. You have to understand, this is one of the busiest times of the year for us, and everyone's working.
So it would be your representation tonight that no one was available to work overtime if you had called them?
I didn't say that. I'm just saying we probably could have found someone. Our minimum staffing level was 10. We were running at 13. We had adequate people that we felt out there.
Well, I mean, if we had 4 more, we could have had a north car and a south car to do nothing but chase fireworks calls, because I'm going to tell you what worries me about fireworks calls. Someone calls in and says, I just heard a loud bang over at my neighbor's house. Everyone assumes it's July 4th, it's fireworks. How do we know it's not domestic violence? How do we know it's not a gunshot? How can we rely on an untrained civilian to call in and make that representation when we really don't know that that is accurate?
I agree.
Well, then I guess what I'm suggesting, for what it's worth, we got a year to plan. The administration just negotiated the police contract with the superior officers and with the patrolmen. Whatever restrictions there are, you guys bought it, and you got to live with it. But I'd be looking at what happened July 4th, 2018, and along about May, I'd be planning on having more officers come in and have them assigned strategically based on the call data from maybe this year and a prior year. And you've got the money. The fiscal year just, this is part of my frustration. The fiscal year just started July 1st. At that point, you're swimming in overtime money. That may not be the case as we go through the year because of the needs to fund other overtime activities. But it would seem to me that if we know this is a problem, then we should really pre-plan, get the command staff together and say, okay, how many more people do we need to come in and what hours do we need them? And I would hope and I would urge you to do that for next year, John. It's too late. You know, the horse has left the barn. It's too late to do anything about it this year. But I really think that would be a reasonable strategy to employ. I want to read a message to you that came in over the weekend, and it's relating to noisy parties, and just bear with me for 1 minute. This came from a resident. As a matter of fact, I think she's going to call the council president because I believe she lives down in his area. At least she told me she either had called him or she's calling him. Got a question for you. Hope you can help. I live near Myrtle Street, where the block party was held last weekend. On Friday and Saturday night, and this Saturday night, they had a party starting late and ended about 4:30 to 5 a.m. I did call the police about 1:15 a.m. this morning. That morning, don't know if they came, but the party got over about 4:30 to 5. It's not fair to the neighbors. Please don't give my name out. I'm worried that if these neighbors know it was me, they will do something. It is unacceptable to me, and I hope it would be unacceptable to all of us here. It is unacceptable to me that people who pay taxes or people who pay rent have to live with the type of noise that disturbs them until 4:30 or 5 in the morning. It further worries me that they are living next to and that's not a political statement. I'd be angry if I had to live that way. So I'm being kind of selfish. I wouldn't want it around my area. So that is just plainly unacceptable. I'm even more concerned that they're worried about retaliation if their name ever came out. But I got to tell you, I hope the message that comes out of here tonight, and I really thank Councilor Azak, Councilor Cruz, Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Nicastro, everyone who has spoken and may speak. This is a collective effort. We've got to do something about this. We're going to drive people out of the city. I had a guy call me from Howland Circle. I'm sure he's going to call council president because that's Ward 3. I had a gentleman call me from Howland Circle. He's lived here for like 30 years. And he says, "Win, I've had it." He said, "I've had it. It was so loud over the weekend because of an event up at the fairgrounds." He said, "I went out to mow my lawn. The music drowned out my lawnmower." I mean, seriously. And I'll gladly share his information with you, Councilor.
You're doing a good job taking my calls, Councilor. Thank you.
If he hasn't called.
You're getting them, I'm not, but that's fine.
All right, well, but really, you know, the fall is coming, people go back to school, the winter is coming, but by next spring, let's have a plan. Let's have a collaborative plan.
I agree. And hopefully an ordinance that we can work with, that works with everybody, and we can get this done.
And if we have to, colleagues, let's have the city solicitor come in here and give us some guidance on disturbing the peace, loud parties, how it affects zoning, how best to investigate these things and get it taken care of. Because, you know, I don't mean to be dramatic, but there are some people that have family members who are terminally ill in this city. I mean, fortunately, it's not me. They deserve to rest. They deserve not to have music going on at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we got to get on this. And that's, I thank you, Mr. President, for this dialogue.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Beauregard.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to point out this evening to those that will watch this, we have new cameras and we have new sound system. We'd like to commend the people that worked really hard in a non-air conditioned building to start putting this system together so that we can have more communicating going on. Okay. Good evening, Chief. All right, we're going to break this up into 4 parts. Okay. Since this is my personal thing, I am really afraid of fire. This whole fireworks thing, word, fire and works. Okay. This is breaking the law when we have fireworks and we're playing around with them, unless we're pyrotechnicians and we're licensed anywhere. But let's remember one thing. One of the reasons that they are illegal is because they can cause fires and endanger people's lives. So it seems that we should be working more closely with the fire department and looking at this from what it truly is. I've had constituents call me and they say they're going to call the police because they were afraid, and this was the summer that we hardly got any rain, unlike this one, and they were afraid that their lawn was going to burn, etc. And I told them, quite frankly, to call the fire department because they have wooden fences, they have grass and trees and what have you. It is too late when someone's house burns down because someone else was clowning around with fireworks. So it just seems that we need to look at it from that angle. Jeopardizing the safety of individuals because they're throwing around fireworks is disturbing the peace, I agree with, and it's so ridiculous to listen to these at 1 in the morning or what have you. That's not fair. But we've got to look at this for what it truly is. This could be endangering people's homes, their property. I mean, no one wants this kind of damage. And this could be endangering their safety. I mean, we're fortunate that our firefighters were there on Kenwood, and saved the lives of 4 people last Friday morning. But as a whole, it doesn't seem that we need to look for fire and to initiate these types of fires. And more than once I've had people call me because kids are out playing in the woods, and I realize that. But they're kids, so we can seem to address this from a different angle. We have to remember that most of the people that have purchased the fireworks are adults that drove to New Hampshire or drove down to the Carolinas or what have you to purchase them there and bring them back here. So that's one of our situations that we need to look at more closely because this is jeopardizing people's safety. Okay. Now we have people that call, and I encourage people to call when it's a concern of this nature, not 911, but 508-941-0200. Okay. And I believe it was mentioned earlier this evening that the dispatchers or the call takers seem to sometimes, and I'm going to put this in quotes, take attitude, and I'm going to remove the quotes. When people are calling a number and they are concerned, they need someone on the other end understanding their concern and working with them and, forwarding this information to others. When I think of some 80-year-old person calling because they're afraid because of a wild party and they don't know what's going to happen, they need someone to respond with compassion and concern in an immediate and urgent way. And they'll be ending soon, or give them a little time, or we've gotten a lot of calls this evening, is not acceptable. And I believe that this is not the message that you send to your team. So there seems to be some disconnect, and I don't think I'm being unreasonable that this needs to change, because right then and there, people are calling upset to begin with. With that kind of response, up goes the frustration and the fear and the anger. Now let's remember, we've emphasized this before, the taxpayers are calling. People that are paying rent or what have you in this community, and they deserve someone that's going to answer the phone and, respect their concerns and their fears. And that's what we want to emphasize from the get-go. Now, I've called, and I've gotten the same responses as other people, and I don't want to burden the police either, because I like to think that they're getting the dangerous individuals off the street. But there's, how would I say, levels of crime, like there's levels of other issues, and that seems to be a real concern. And to me, that right then and there, that needs to be revisited, and immediately. We can't wait till next summer. Now, we have a crime analyst. I've met this brilliant woman, and I was lucky to see some of the work she's done. And I know that she wasn't able to come and speak in front of us. But as my colleague had mentioned here before, that if you guys are attending, and not attending, addressing these concerns of these parties, whether they're illegal business ventures, I stress illegal business ventures, or there's some parties that have gotten out of hand because people are just having a super good time, either way, I'm under the impression they're recorded. So maybe we need to break down how this is done and have our crime analysts look at this more closely. Does this make sense in some way? And if it seems like there's a cluster, just like I believe that if there's a lot of clusters for drug calls, or let's say robberies, armed robberies to several banks or several retail establishments, you get that all printed out and you analyze this and say, oh, we're going to need to revisit that or go through that so that this doesn't occur. And that's what I believe that we need to look at with that situation too. Because we've got to understand, and as my colleague, Councilor Azak, had mentioned before, when we have people parking in front of other people's driveways that have to leave for work or have to take someone out or what have you. I mean, I live next door to someone that's a pharmacist technician, so he works weird hours. I mean, he needs to be able to leave. And I know he's not the only pharmacist technician or person with unusual working hours. So that, someone shouldn't have to call the police to have someone's car towed because they're blocking the driveways. I have other people that say that there's a party and it says resident-only parking, and up and down the street there's all cars parked. So I don't know if we need to work with another sector of law enforcement.
Councilor,
Yes.
you're bringing in your whole ward and your issue.
I'm bringing it together. I'm bringing it together.
I understand
Yes.
what you're trying to do.
Yes.
I think the chief does too. I'm not trying to cut you down.
No,
but
I
I'm just-
understand. I'm just trying to work this out. And I know that years ago that they needed a lot of police to do those details when they're doing tons of road construction, and they created a new type of team. I don't have all the details, but maybe we could be doing something like that and just going tagging along, because it seems that when people are hit in the wallet, that's when something gets done, and maybe that needs to be enforced. But my particular concern about that, as my colleague had alluded to, is we want the emergency vehicles out of there, and we don't want people's driveways. Okay. And the last part of this is, there's the people that are angry about these illegal parties are not only the neighbors, and not to downplay their concerns, because they're completely justifiable, but there's all these businesses that are operating legally that are not too happy about the idea that they're paying taxes. They have the Board of Health coming in, the Fire Department, and the License Commission, and they're doing what is right. And then meanwhile, all these other people are doing what is wrong and kind of getting away with it. So there's that whole, anger issue building up too. And I certainly don't want to lose these business establishments. That's a little one of my biases. But also, so this is a whole another aspect that needs to be revisited. And I just want to highlight that you guys, I know you work hard, and I'm not going to downplay that at all. And Lieutenant LaGrease recently was able to shut down an illegal party along with Mr. Todd Taglia, the commissioner, the head of License Commission, when I found some nice little invitations at the Bat Bus Terminal to an illegal party that was going to be taking place after the License Commission had told them they could not have the party. So that, I know you guys are out there working, and there's a whole lot going on, but I want to thank you for what you're trying to do, but I want to highlight these individuals' concerns and realize that that's part of it, is validating their concerns and respecting them and moving on. So I look forward to working with you and your team in the future, as my colleagues do, to make this better for everyone in Brockton. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. All set, Counselor? Thank you. Counselor Moynihan,
Thank you, thank you.
you're all set? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm done, yes, thank you. Just getting back to I think we got a few different things. The basic thing, all these ideas we have, and as usual, we all throw the ideas out. We tried to work on our ordinance last year to come up with fines, and everything sort of just fell by the wayside. We tried to put fines in going back the first time, the second time, the third time, and we really had legal problems trying to pass that ordinance to add on to it. But I think the basic thing is that, Council Fowler's right. We have 4th of July's coming up. You got to put on more guys. It's just common sense. These times of the year that we know there's going to be increased issues with noise, parties, what have you, probably the graduation. These nights that we know that we have in the past had problems with a lot of noise, parties going on, probably want to put more guys. It's just common sense. We should probably start doing that because it is getting worse. I mean, I had one night, it's a Thursday night, they were going till 1 in the morning. I called up, and I know that's the whole thing. We really don't have, we're so busy with calls, other calls, that these are, really not that important as far as police work's involved. I ended up getting up and going next door and telling them, hey, enough's enough. I had to do it myself. But I understand they had 211 calls. I mean, there's not much we can do. So all the ideas we're having, I think the best idea, unless you enforce it, it's not going to do any good. We come up with all these ideas. I think you can do, the things that we can do is we can do, like Council Fowler says, those busy times of years, let's add 5 more guys on. Like, get them. You're going to have to do it. I mean, if there's busy times of year at the gas company, my vacation goes right out the window. Sorry, you got to work. It's an important time of the year. So that's something I think we should probably do and enforce that. But the best idea, I thought, was like coming up with a person, a car, that will be dedicated to noise. So what's your busiest noise night? It's going to be Friday and Saturday night. So you possibly can have somebody on that time with the monitors, what have you, going out and maybe addressing those calls, because it is getting worse in the city, and you guys you're getting more calls as far as noise, but also other things going on. You guys are bombed, and the other thing is we just need more patrolmen out there. But so I think you should probably work on the things you can do now. You could probably put somebody on just particularly to cover those noise calls, maybe on those busy nights. Plan ahead to have more people on those nights that you expect that we're going to have some issues and things like that. But we've been trying to get ordinances through, and I don't know, we could talk till we're red in the face, but unless we have enforcement and let's have a plan to the police, those ordinances and all these ideas are going to just be on a piece of paper. So I think it's you guys going to have to come up with maybe a little better plan, think about this more as more and more, it just keeps getting worse and worse. It's not your fault, it's just that the city is doing this. It's like more and more issues with these noise problems. But anyway, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor DeCastro, not DeCastro. Darren Court, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. It sounds pretty funny to call me Councilor DeCastro. That's pretty good. Well, why not? Well, my hair's a little bit shorter. Chief, it's so good to see you. I would like to thank you and your men and women for everything that you guys are doing in this city. As a councilor at large, I too sometimes do get some calls in regard to loud music and stuff like that, and of course fireworks. I am more than willing to work in collaboration with all of my colleagues to see what we can do to actually help you out in regard to how we can minimize this issue. I think that your men and women are more than willing to do so. So I heard pretty much everything that everybody said, and I think as an elected official, somebody who does represent the entire city, I do have a solemn obligation, not just to listen to what we are saying here, but at least do something about it. So what I'll do personally, by tomorrow, I'll do some research in regard to what Boston is doing, a couple other places, and see how we can actually work in collaboration with different places to see how we can actually minimize that. Because I think it is a problem, because like my colleague, Councilor Farrell said, if somebody trying to sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, I think it's important for them to be at peace. But at the same time, I think we got to understand that, like they said, 4th of July, it's one of the busiest time of the year. So although we may put more guys on the street, there will be some people that will still do the same thing. So I really want to thank you. So I don't want to keep on talking about how we can do this and how we can do that, but I know that you are willing to do it, but the question is how we go about it. So if there is something that we can do, or if there is something that I personally can do to help you out in regard to solving this issue, please let me know. I reach out to you many times about certain things that I want to do. You are always there for me. And matter of fact, we had a meeting in your office based on certain things that I want to do. So the reason I'm making this point, I just want people to understand that I don't just sit behind this mic and act like, I know everything. So if there is something that you know, that you think that we should know in regard to how we can best serve the people, and I said it, the people is my boss, so I work for the people. So I have a solemn obligation to do everything that I could possibly do to making sure that they are at peace whenever they are doing anything in this city. So thank you, Chief, and of course to all your men and women, and thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this issue.
All set, Counselor?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions for the chief in regards to this particular matter?
Move to recommend favorably.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to move favorably to the full city council. All in favor? Opposed? Goes back to the full city council. Thank you, chief, and I'm sure at some point we'll come back with other things that, we can start to attack and try to work some of these things out, but appreciate you for being here. Thank you.
Yes. Together we'll get it done. I mean,
I'm sure we will, but first of all, we need the manpower first. That's the way I look at it. Everybody wants everything done, but we need the manpower out in the streets too. And that's the most important thing. I think you can agree with me on that. You don't disagree, right? No.
I do not.
That's right. Thank you, Chief. Councilors, just before we take anyone who has any moments of personal privilege, but next week we're right here for the 27th, and then like I said, we may have only have one finance meeting in September. We'll see what type of work comes to us for the 27th. Don't forget September 3rd is Labor Day, and the 4th is, I believe, Primary Day, and I'm not going to be around that next day, Wednesday on the 5th. So, see what we do on September 10th as well for council work, and maybe just have one FinCom on the 17th. So it might be a little bit longer, but it may not be. We don't know that. But we'll decide that next week. And just in one highlight, I just wanted to mention to you, because you all will be receiving at some point a letter which is going to come from Design Principles, and Design Principles is a gal, Karen Elves, who is working on doing the web pages over in the city, and they came to me and asked, did I want to participate in having the city council one done, and I said yes. So she's going to make contact with you through a letter, and it's going to give us some ample time so that probably at one of the meetings coming up, the next council meeting or the one in September, they will come here, they will take a clean photo shot of all of us right here. They'll come to us, and then they will ask you for some bio information so that it can be, reworked a little bit. So I didn't want to say no to it because I thought it was a great idea in doing a little bit of a cleanup, and we still have, several months left of our term anyway. So you will be in contact with her at some point through an email, all right? Anyone got any other questions or concerns? Councilor Sullivan?
Mr. President, I just want those that sit on the ordinance committee, I'm waiting to hear back from Attorney Resnick. I emailed her last week. I'm just trying to get a date that works for her. My intent is to have another meeting this month. So once I hear back from Shannon, I'll reach out to all those that sit on the ordinance committee. And I also, on behalf of the council, I want to thank the fire department. They saved some lives down in Campello the other day. That was a terrible, terrible fire. And, there was some brave people, there was some injured people, but we didn't lose any lives. So, again, on behalf of myself, and I know everybody that sits on this esteemed body, we want to thank Brockton Fire on that. Thank you.
Did a great job. Any other councilors? Anything else to come before this committee this evening? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.